Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Crystals and Coffee. Today is National Psychics Day, so I wanted to bring on some of my favorite intuitives to share their gifts with you. And today, right now, we have my personal astrologer, Tanaaz, and she's also the founder of Forever Conscious and has authored several books, and she's coming on to talk to us about our natal charts. And there's also a lot going on this year within the stars, and so I thought that it could be really great for her to share all of her knowledge with us so that we can see how we're going to navigate the next so long. Oh, somebody asked about my necklace. Thank you so much. Yes, this is a big badass necklace I got in Peru. This is amethyst on the bottom and serpentine on the top and chrysocolla. And I can see Tanaaz just came on, so let's get her up here. There we go.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. How's Cali?
Oh, it's good. It's nice and warm. You're in Philadelphia, right?
Pittsburgh, close. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How is it there?
You know what? There's been a lot of like major thunderstorms here, which has actually been really great. Yeah, it's been beautiful.
That's cool. And I guess it's sort of nice to have a bit of weather here. It's just, I mean, it's nice. It's like sunshine every day, but it'd be nice for a change.
Yeah, I know. After living in California for 5 years, I forgot about summer rain and all these things. Just like so much weather over here. It's like, oh, this is exciting. Have that for a little bit. So I was just telling everybody about you before you came on. But and I was telling them how you were going to be kind enough to go over some of the basics around the natal chart, and then, oh my God, tell us everything that's happening in the stars right now, because there's a lot going on. And but I think also, since I have so many entrepreneurs that follow me, I was wondering if it was possible for you to kind of share how you got into astrology and founding Forever Conscious.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually was a content writer for different like blogs and websites. I did freelance writing, and I would just be asked to write about all sorts of like stuff that was like, not, apps and like, marketing and stuff that like I wasn't really interested in, but I liked to write, and it paid well, so that's what I did. And I did that for a long time, and I was like, wow, I'm writing about stuff that is kind of boring. Why don't I write about stuff that is interesting? And I was writing for all these other websites and these other blogs. I'm like, hey, why don't I just make my own and write about stuff that I like to write about? And that's kind of how it started. And then it just sort of took off, and I just would keep writing, just basically like, this is stuff that I'm interested in, and I put it out there, and that's kind of how it all started. So, yeah.
How long have you studied astrology?
almost 10 years. So I was
Oh, okay.
introduced to it. Yeah. So one of my friends learnt, and I thought, oh, it's just like your, horoscope in the paper kind of thing. I didn't really realize it was like a whole chart system. And so when she showed me my chart, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then that kind of kickstarted my,
Okay.
self journey with that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, for those of us that are not familiar with astrology, I'm just going to let you drive, lady. What is the natal
Sure.
chart? Why does it matter?
Yes. Okay. So the natal chart is a snapshot of the planets at the time that you were born. So the time, date, place of your birth, all the planets were aligned in a particular configuration, and that becomes your blueprint, sort of like your soul's blueprint. It like sort of the position of the planets, you can think of them as codes that you get to unpack and decipher, and they'll give you clues as to your destiny, your path, your personality, and all of that. So that's sort of your natal chart, and that's actually very different to just I'm a Gemini, or I'm born right now, so I'm a Leo. The natal chart kind of shows you that that's important, but that's like a very small piece of the overall picture.
Okay. So what are some of the key elements in a natal chart that people are looking at?
Sure. So I would say your sun sign is definitely important. So that would be like, I'm a Leo, I'm a Virgo. I would say the next most important thing, because the chart is so complex, if anyone's like looked at their natal chart for the first time, they're like, what does this even like mean? So I would say start with your sun sign, start with your moon sign. That's the next, probably most significant planetary body that a lot of us feel very sensitive to the moon. So that's a good place to start. And then the next place I would say is your rising sign. And that's the sign, the zodiac sign that was on the eastern horizon at the time of your birth. And I like to think of that as sort of the gateway to your entire chart. It's like the lens that you view your life with. So your sun sign is sort of the core, the center of who you are. I would say the moon is maybe our heart, and then the rising would be the lens that we choose to see the world. So there are three sort of significant points that you can start to look at on the chart.
Okay. And how often should someone get a reading with their astrology?
It kind of depends. I would say once a year, really, because the stuff that's really going to impact you and really like maybe the sort of more stronger like planetary stuff, it's usually going to be in effect for the year. So I would say once a year is pretty good, but it depends. If you're going through something and you're just like, hey, I want to know what the energy around me is, or your birthday's coming up. Birthdays is always a good time to do it around your birthday. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had right after I moved to California, Tanaaz was actually one of the first people I met when I got there, and I had an amazing reading with her. Not only is she, super knowledgeable about astrology, but was looking at my chart and also channeling and offering all this wisdom coming down from the stars. It was quite an incredible experience. So I'm really glad that you're able to come on and share all this. I also, I kind of had a question actually about some of the stuff like what's a yod?
Oh man.
In a chart, like what are some of those things, like when an astrologer says, oh, you have a yod in your chart, and then they're like
Yeah, the yod is like it's sort of known as like the finger of God, pointing
oh
at something in your chart and being like, whoa, check this out. Yeah.
oh shit, okay.
Yeah, so that's where astrology gets kind of technical, because it's not just, where the planets are, but it's also how they connect and talk to each other. So the yod, and I can't actually remember it off the top of my head, but the yod is a configuration of three planets. A square would be two planets within 90 degrees of each other. There's all these different like aspects that you want to look at. So that's where it gets kind of technical, and you can get like if you do your free chart online, if you go, Google birth natal chart free, you can get those descriptions and they'll kind of outline it for you. But that's where you want an astrologer, because otherwise the computer can only kind of break them down, whereas an astrologer can look at them like a holistic sort of portrait.
Yeah. Someone's actually asking, that's like a follow-up question on that. If you could be a little more specific, how does someone know if they have a yod?
Okay, so if you go, I'm pretty sure, trying to think what website I know. So draw up your chart, and usually below it'll give you an outline of all the different like aspects and alignments in your chart. So usually they'll be able to see, because I can't actually remember what the degrees are off the top of my head of the yod, but it is a configuration, and I think most astrology softwares will tell you if it's present in the chart.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
by the way, we're so lucky to have Tanaaz with us right now. So if anybody has any questions besides how do I find my yod, to please put them in the feed, because this is your chance to ask her. And I was also wondering, there's like what, 5 planets in retrograde or something right now? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so at the moment, actually, what we have is pretty normal. So it just so happens, and this is just sort of the way the cycles go. For some reason, all of these planets tend to go retrograde around the same time. So this will be a trend for the coming years. What makes this year very different and not normal is that we also have Venus and Mars will go retrograde in September. So that's unusual. So all these, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus is going to go retrograde next week. Pluto, all of that, they go retrograde once a year. So this cycle that we're in just happens that they're all doing it sort of at the same time. But what makes this year a little bit different is we had Venus in May, and then we're going to have Mars in September, and that's not typical. Venus goes retrograde every 18 months. Mars goes retrograde every 24-ish. So, having both of those on either side of all of these other retrogrades is a little unusual.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we already have questions. We already have questions
Yes.
coming in.
By the way, thank you for my mug.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you like it. It's my favorite mug for tea time.
Yes. Yeah, not coffee for me, tea, but it's good.
So let's see here. Oh my gosh, so many questions. What's the significance of houses?
Okay, so the houses are sort of like the pieces of pie that your chart is broken up in, and each house signifies a different meaning. So the first house will be your identity, your personality. Any planets in the first house, they will be your power planets. They will be the planets that really will unlock and help you sort of decode ways to come into more of your authentic self and your identity. And then the second house is more about your self-worth. The third house is your communication. So each house will have a different meaning. Should I go through all of them? I don't know.
Why not? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the third house is communication. Also your siblings can be in there. Fourth house. Okay, so the third, fourth house cusp is actually one of my favorite places on the chart at the moment. I kind of go through phases of different areas of the chart that I just really feel gravitated towards. So any planet that's on that third or fourth house cusp is it's called the nadir. That's an angle called the nadir. And it indicates sort of who you are at midnight. I read that description somewhere, and I just thought it was like a really cool way to describe it. It's like who you are when no one is watching, your very true sort of authentic self, when everyone else is, sleeping, and it's just you, and, you're up there alone with your thoughts. What's going on? And so that's the bottom of our chart can help us unpack some of that shadow side, that, side that we hide away from the world. So that's third, fourth house cusp. The fourth house is all about home and family. Then you move to the fifth house. That's love relationships, creativity. The sixth house is your daily routine, work environment, also your health. The seventh house is relationships, marriages, business partnerships. Then we go to the eighth house, and it's the house of sort of transformation, spiritual stuff, other people's money as well. So if you were going to win the lottery, you might expect to see the eighth house, doing something nice. The ninth house is education, travel. The 10th house, that's another power place in the chart. Between the ninth and the 10th house, That's known as the midheaven, and that is like your career, your purpose. That's all like can be found in the 10th house. And then 11th house is like communities, friendships, and then the 12th house is all the subconscious, hidden stuff that skeletons in the closet are all hiding in the 12th.
Oh my goodness. Someone here has a specific question. What's going to happen December 21st with the conjunction?
Yes, so that's
Yes?
a
Okay.
really exciting. It's very exciting, actually. So I haven't yet done my deep dive, but I'll give you sort of what I know at the moment. I will have an article about this closer to the time, but this so on this day we have Saturn and Jupiter coming together at, I think it's Aquarius, in 1 degree of Aquarius, or maybe it's 2 degrees of Aquarius, but early on in Aquarius, both of these planets coming together, and this is huge. So Saturn and Jupiter conjunct every, oh man, my mind is blanking. I think it's every 30 years or so, but it's it's nothing unusual. However, this is the first time that they're coming together in an air sign for the last like 200 years. So for me, when I look at this and when I think about it, this is like Age of Aquarius themes. There's a lot of debate about when the Age of Aquarius starts, if we're already in the Age of Aquarius, but I feel like Saturn and Jupiter coming together in Aquarius for the first time in an air sign in like 200 plus years sort of signifies very similar themes as Age of Aquarius.
Okay. Whoa.
So what it's pretty big. It's big.
So what could that's around the holiday season. What could we all expect as a present?
Well, it's interesting. Okay,
oh God.
So how do I put this? I would say from September to probably the end of November, we've got some pretty intense astrology. I don't want, like, we thought this year has been intense. I feel like there's a lot more to come through September and November. So maybe by December, when that intensity is starting to lessen, we'll already kind of feel, oh, wow, like things are, maybe that intensity is reduced. Maybe we're feeling a little more directed. And then this Saturn-Jupiter alignment, maybe we're starting to see where all of this is leading us, If I think of like Age of Aquarius themes, it's like a time of community, of helping one another, of, living in harmony. I know that sort of seems like so far away sometimes, but I really genuinely feel like that's where we're heading. And this Saturn-Jupiter alignment is sort of the entry to that way of living for all of us, hopefully.
Okay. Okay, we have another one. It's
Yes.
kind of like, when will I find my partner for life? Is it someone I'm manifesting, or is that something that you can actually tell in the chart, like maybe down to like an age bracket?
Okay, so I would say for me and the way I do it, not necessarily, not that specific, but you can look to see where Venus is in your chart, also where Jupiter is. So when Venus is close to your ascendant, so that's your rising sign in between the 12th and the first house, or if Venus is in your first house, that's transiting Venus, not natal Venus. So you'll have to look and see where Venus is. Actually, I'll tell you, she's going to move into Cancer on Friday, I think. So this week. So whoever has Cancer rising, this is a great time for you to put yourself out there. Like, I know obviously we're all in, most of us are in quarantine, maybe online, doing something online. But when Venus is in your sun sign, your rising sign, or your moon sign, it's a good time to kind of put yourself out there, put feelers out there. That's the same for Jupiter as well.
Okay. Our next question, these are great questions. Everybody please continue to ask. So what if you have no planets in a certain house and many planets in another house?
Yes. Okay. So if you have many planets in another house, that is known, well, it depends how they're configured, but that's called a stellium. And it indicates that's a huge focus of your life. And that's where you can kind of get a little obsessive or stuck. But that's just what your soul has come to learn in this life. And that's sort of for you to sort of unpack. It's also interesting to look at the house opposite where you have all those planets too, because it's sort of like a reflection, and that can also hold clues as how you may be able to unpack or look at some of that stuff in your, in the house that's all packed. And then if you have an empty house, you want to look at the sign that rules that house, because everyone will have a different zodiac sign that will rule the house, and that will give you the energy of that house and where that energy is manifesting in your life. And then you can also take it a step further to look for the ruling planet of that sign. So for example, let's say your sixth house is empty, it's ruled by Virgo, you can look to see where Mercury is, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's actually a great question. I remember an astrologer told me, they were looking at my chart and they were like, you live in the underworld. I was like, what?
Yeah,
like everything's on the lower part.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so if you have a lot of planets in the lower half of your chart, yeah, that's a very internal energy. If you have a lot of planets in the top part of your chart, that's a very external sort of energy. Yeah, totally.
Okay. Someone else wants to know, what should we expect from Mars retrograde in September? I have that same question.
Well, that's a very good question. Okay, yes, it's pretty full on. Okay, so Mars retrograde on a regular, when it's just retrograding on its 24-month cycle, is a time where maybe we feel a little bit of, we lose a bit of motivation. And it's a time where we kind of want to go within and check and see if our goals are still aligned with where we want to be, where we're going. It's a good time to reassess our goals, a good time to check to see if our actions are aligned with where we want to be and where we want to go. So that's Mars, retrograde as a whole. What happens this year, however, is Mars is activating the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that we had earlier in the year. So to kind of simplify that, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction has sort of been the wave that we've all been riding through 2020. So that wave of, planetary energy is going to be amped up. The dial is going to be turned up to 100. Because Mars will be activating that point, which is now becomes a very sensitive point in the sky. So we are likely to see a lot of tension, a lot of heated emotions, a lot of Mars retrograde is going to square both Pluto and Saturn during its time in retro. And this can manifest as power plays or feeling oppressed, feeling controlled, being sensitive to people in power and what they're saying, and wanting to act out, speak out, protest about it. And Mars can be kind of violent sometimes too.
Yeah. Okay. So we have another question. There's so many questions for you. I know you can break down your natal chart. But how can you break down current start alignments and relate them to yourself and your current events?
Yes. Okay. So what you want is a transit chart. So just like you can find your natal chart for free online, you can also find your transiting chart for free online as well. So just put that into Google, free transit chart, birth chart, astrology, you'll find it. And what it'll do is it'll draw up your natal chart in the center, and then it'll put where the planets are now around that. And then that's how you can start to see where the planets are now in relation to your own chart. And that's going to help you sort of understand where you're at right now, what energies are activated right now, and sort of where you're heading.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Someone asked, what is, so like say like the full moon in Aquarius just passed but we're in Leo, so why do the full moons have a different sign than the sign we're in?
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Very, yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's a great question. Okay, so full moons are always going to fall, usually in the opposite sign that the sun is in, because that's what a full moon is. The full moon is the sun aligning opposite the moon in astrology. So, the opposite sign to Leo is Aquarius. So that's why we get the Aquarius full moon. And that's why the new moon will always fall in the same sign as the sun, because a new moon is marked as the moon and the sun at the same degree in the same sign. So yeah, that's why we get opposite moon to the sun when a
That's
full moon happens.
that's a great like foundational question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, it doesn't,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that's how it
Yeah.
works, but that's, yeah.
Is it possible to regulate your menstrual cycle by working with the moon?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think so. So typically, you're supposed to, or sort of not supposed to, but this is how it works, that you ovulate on the full moon and you bleed on the new moon. However, I find that I kind of do the reverse. I don't know why, but that's my body. So I don't know. I think it's just about, connecting and trying to be aware of your own rhythms and your own body and feeling into your mood and your hormones and maybe what your womb wisdom is telling you at the time of the full moon. But yes, typically that is a very sacred thing, and women used to all bleed at the same time in, tribal communities, and it was usually always
Yeah.
in partnership with the moon.
A great book to read about that is The Red Tent.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yes.
That's talking about that. Yeah, if anybody wants to read a beautiful story about that. It's funny, bringing up the bleeding. I noticed that much like yourself, I was bleeding on the more like the full moon, and as I've kind of like gone along, it completely moved to the new moon, and like
Hmm.
it would like do these big like jumping increments, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now like over the course of a couple years now it's always the new and it hasn't moved again. So that's been pretty interesting.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I've noticed that too. I feel like at one point I also was aligned on the new moon, but now for whatever reason I'm bleeding on the full moon. So I don't know, I don't know, maybe there's like
Oh, what is
some
that?
different, I don't know, energy, or like I need to release, because like full moons are very releasing. And
Yeah.
I guess you could look at that like shedding the lining or also releasing an egg. I guess you can look at it both ways, but I don't know, maybe just mood wise or energy wise or whatever's going on in your life. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have
It is a
to
good question.
notice that. Okay. What is the difference between these charts and human design?
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know too much about human design, to be honest, but I think human design, from what I know, is a combination of like astrology and numerology, and I think also, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but I Ching, the Chinese.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a mishmash of all of that. But I do know that it was in this, whatever human design is, the system for it was given to the person who invented it through a being. He said that a voice came down and he, got all this information and then developed this program, human
Yeah.
design.
Yeah, I know like this much about human design. I'm so fascinated with it. I know that there's four personality types kind of that you can be, and it does have like you have this body in the middle, and you have either open or closed organs, and that kind of tells you things about yourself. And then it has
Interesting.
the I Ching, then it has these three circles around it, and like the I Ching comes into play. There's something that looks like astrology. I'm just saying that like a caveman. And then there's some other thing, and that's how they read it. And I remember I was like, oh, I kind of just want to dabble in this. And the book, like the intro to human design book, was like this. I was like, nope, I'm gonna get a human design reader.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I
Yeah,
was
it
like,
seems like a lot to unpack. Yeah.
I don't need one more modality right now. Um, okay, let's see. We're gonna keep going with all these amazing questions. What does it mean if I have a Plutonic Scorpio theme to my horoscope?
Okay, so that means Pluto is very active in your chart. So Pluto is a very slow moving planet. So to have it in a position in your chart where it's very active would be very rare. So someone who is Platonic or Plutonian would have Pluto very, very active in their chart. And then the Scorpio side of it is that Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, Pluto is ruled by Scorpio. So that's where the Scorpio part comes into it.
Okay. And another kind of one of those, what does it mean when you have Sun and Mars and Mercury and the seventh house?
Oh man, loaded question. I would have to see the whole chart to really unpack that. But I have the sun in the seventh house as well. And I know that that is not considered to be a very strong placement for the sun because the seventh house is the house of other and our relationships. And the sun is who we are, it's our core identity. So when you have the sun in the seventh house, sometimes that can manifest as people pleasing tendencies or giving away your opinion or what you think when you're around other people and sort of like giving in to what other people are saying over your own opinion. So I definitely relate to that. And when I learned that about my seventh house sun, I was like, man, that's so true.
Um,
I always sort of felt like I'd be hanging out with someone and they would say to me this, and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. And then somebody else would say the opposite, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds good too. You know, so it's sort of like learning how to like know what you stand for, what you believe in, rather than like, you know, getting lost in the thoughts and relationships and opinions of other
yeah.
people.
Oh, okay. All
Hmm.
right. I've got more, lady. Oh my gosh, we have so many questions here for you. What are the indicators? Here, this one actually came in this way. What are the indicators in a birth chart for successful marriage?
Okay, really good question. So, actually, funnily enough, it's Saturn. Saturn is the planet that you want to look at. Okay, so if you're doing a marriage chart, you want to look at both people's chart, obviously. But Saturn is a really good indication for marriage because Saturn is a planet of longevity. And a
Mm,
lot of people wouldn't think that. I wouldn't think that because Saturn is also like a very kind of harsh planet, doesn't have the best reputation sometimes, but it is the planet that's going to show how stable this relationship is. Is it going to stand the test of time? Are these two people really committed to each other and willing to like work through everything? So when it comes to marriage, you want to look for a well aspected Saturn. So what I mean by that is that Saturn's in a good position in when you look at both charts.
okay. Is it also too like what else? Like you think about, oh, traditionally someone's like, well, we have to check their birth charts to see if it is a good marriage, potentially. What else are you looking for besides the Saturn
Mm.
placement?
So that's something that's very commonly done in like Vedic astrology. They're big on
Okay.
compatibility, and to be honest, I haven't dabbled too much specifically what else, but I would say Saturn, I would say the Moon, I would say Venus, and Mars. You'd probably look to all of those planets.
Okay. We also have a lot of questions. I'll let you put this in your head about it because I know you were kind of grabbing for what it was, but a lot of people are asking, they want your recommendation on the best place to actually create the chart, like whatever that online resource is to.
Yeah.
So if you,
Um, sure. I like
oh,
astro.com.
there you go.
Astro.com. Yeah. Yeah. Astro.com, and they will, so you put in your birth date with astro.com. So you go to their free horoscope section, put in your birth date, and then it will give you transit charts. It'll also give you different asteroids and, maybe more obscure things as I sort of learn about them, or as you learn about them, you can add more things to the chart.
Okay. You said the word asteroid. I have a question.
Hmm.
Why do we kind of treat asteroids the same way as planets, if that makes
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a really good question. So I think the main planets still get a lot of the focus, But asteroids, they're still kind of like hovering around, right? Orbiting the sun and influencing. And so as astrology's kind of evolved, people have looked at these asteroids and assigned meanings and symbolism and, received intuitive messages from them. And so then they have kind of woven themselves into the work of astrology as well.
What are some popular asteroids that we look to for guidance and placement, I guess?
Sure. I would say the most popular, although there's a little bit of debate as to whether or not it is actually an asteroid, but I would say the most popular is Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. It represents what sort of inherited, if you will, wounds that we have come into this life with and how we can use them as strengths. So Chiron is like a really great asteroid, but I say that lightly because there's a little debate about that, but it's classified as an asteroid.
It's your favorite asteroid?
It is my favorite. And actually, I just released an article about this too, so you can check foreverconscious.com. But there's also the Atlantis asteroid, which I just discovered. Yeah. Yeah, so there's really cool, a lot of cool asteroids out there, and I've just been doing a lot of research about the Atlantis one, so check that out if you're interested. But yeah, there's lots of asteroids.
I'm absolutely going to check that out.
Yeah.
I got questions. Let's see what else. Oh my goodness, so many questions here. How about this one? Do you think there are other beings living on other planets?
Yeah, I think so. I do. I mean, I don't know about, beings on Mars and Venus, let's say, but I definitely believe that there are other extraterrestrial beings out there on different star systems. We have Lionsgate coming up this week, and that's all about the Syrian people, I guess, can we call them people, I guess, but Syrian energy, Syrians, absolutely. I believe that there are other life forms out there.
Yeah, I feel like it would just be narcissistic of us to think that we are the only intelligent life on this in this vast universe that has not been explored to the very end, where it ends, right? It's just
Totally. Yes. Yes.
something else is out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. The universe is way too big for us to just be the only things out here. Can you imagine that? No way.
I know. Somebody wants your opinion on black holes.
Oh man. Okay, I don't know. I don't really have too much of an opinion. I'm not sure. Okay, so I guess they contain just like unknown matter, right? They're just like voids of like mysterious unknown. I don't know. That's my opinion on it.
Let's see. I have two houses without planets. Does this mess me up?
No, it absolutely doesn't mess you up. That's very, very normal. It's everyone, actually not everybody. I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people will have empty houses. It doesn't mess you up. It doesn't mean that part of your life is devoid of energy. When you have an empty house, what you want to look at is this ruling sign, and that's going to give you the understanding of how that energy manifests, where it manifests, and then you can look to the ruling planet of that sign.
I think I have like 5 or 6 empty houses.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It's very common.
Okay. Yeah, half your chart just kind of skews one way or the other. So that's
Yeah.
common.
Yes, yeah, it is
Yeah.
common. So if you had, there is a configuration where, and I have seen this, where somebody has planets sort of really sprinkled out everywhere in their chart.
Mhm.
It's called a splash when that happens because the planets are just kind of splashed all around. And this person was actually in a class that I took in astrology. When I moved to LA, I took an astrology class, and he said, and he would talk about, the meaning of this splash, and he said he had a hard time focusing on one thing. His mind was always over there, over there, over there. So, that was indicative of that sort of the planets being, spread out everywhere.
Okay. Someone they kind of want to get caught up in the conversation. They're asking, what do you mean by an empty house?
Okay, so when you draw up your natal birth chart, which you can do online for free, and you notice that there are no planets in a particular little section of your house, that would be an empty house, I guess.
Okay. And let's see. Um, is it bad to have heavy 12th house energy?
It's not bad, but it does indicate because that 12th house is a lot of subconscious stuff. It
Mhm.
does indicate that your soul signed up to do a lot of sort of shadow work and inner healing and release work too, because it's the 12th house is the last house. It's sort of like that real like karmic ending and ready for probably in your next life for a new beginning. So I don't know. I sort of feel like when somebody has a strong 12th house, and this is something I'd have to see the chart, but I really do feel in most cases it's a soul that's on the last leg of a karmic journey, wrapping up all of that stuff, and then in their next life they're on to something else.
Okay. Can you tell, this is another question, can you tell professions from somebody's chart,
Yes.
what they'll
So
be?
yeah, you can definitely see what type of profession that they would be drawn to by looking at their 10th house, but also their 6th house, because the 6th house rules over your day-to-day routine. So, somebody who has a lot of energy or a lot of planets in their 6th house usually is somebody who likes to have their hands in many different projects. Maybe they're self-employed. And then the 10th house, you can also see indicators in the 10th house of what profession they might be drawn to or the things that they might be good at or love to do.
Okay. Go back and look and see if I'm see if I'm in line.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Let me ask. Oh my gosh, Tanaaz, you have so many questions here. Okay, how about this one? I've recently read that I am currently in the middle of my second square waxing Saturn. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes. So
What does that
I
mean?
I
Back
would
up. What does that mean?
so I assume if I'm understanding that correctly is that you have just had you are a few years you're midway between your Saturn return. So you've had your Saturn return, you've turned 28, 29, you've had your Saturn return, and now I think that happens around your 40s, maybe yeah, like your mid 40s to late 40s. You have what's called your Saturn square, which is when Saturn comes around and says, all right, you've had your Saturn return. That was a few years ago. Have you done the work? Have you done the lessons? Are you, really taking responsibility for all the things that you wanted to take responsibility for?
Okay. But is that so I have a question off of that. Because I was under the impression, so you have your Saturn return, and then 30-ish years later you have your second Saturn return. This is different. This is like a check-in to
Yeah.
see if you're like going
Yes.
the right way. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's exactly right. It's sort of like yeah, it's sort of like Saturn just popping in. He's not gonna like Saturn return you, but he's gonna be like, hey, what's going, just sort of a check-in.
I think we should talk about Saturn return for anybody that doesn't know what that is.
Yes. Okay, Saturn return. So this is going to happen for everybody, usually around the age, it can happen as early as 27, but I would say for most people, 28, 29, 30, that's really when you're going to be in the brunt of your Saturn return. And essentially what it is Saturn returning to the place where it was at the time of your birth. And Saturn is the sort of strict teacher of the zodiac. So it's sort of like, have you done your homework? Saturn is the planet of karma. So you have made it through an entire karmic cycle of your life, one karmic cycle of your life so far. And Saturn comes in to just sort of make sure that you, as a soul, are doing what you came here to do. If you're not, it can shake things up in your life and help you get on that path. Usually we want to commit to something, or we come into a sense of adulthood or understanding of what we really want to do or what we want to take responsibility for in our life.
Yeah, I my Saturn return was the meanest.
Oh, mine was so brutal. And I thought being a Capricorn, I was like, oh yeah, this is, what could Saturn possibly, oh no, it was terrible.
Yeah. I'll tell you what mine was. It's like the whole reason I'm here. It was all of my psychic senses turning on within a couple of weeks, like in the middle of the dense New York jungle, and I was
Wow.
seeing ghosts and hearing voices and premonitions and like all this stuff happening. And I have, I had never touched any of that. And I was sitting there going, I'm like, do I need to go to the mental institution? It was like that intense. And it sent me on this crazy journey. And to your point, I apparently was off piste because I thought I was, going to be running a major fashion label or something like that at some point, and I ended up working in the healing realm.
Yeah, there you go. Totally. Yeah, it puts you on the course, I guess.
Yeah, it was tough. Give all your stuff away, move, quit your job, break up with your boyfriend. Yeah, I mean,
Oh
just like
wow. Yeah.
it was a full on like leveling.
Mm. I mean, that's obviously that would have been extremely difficult, but like, it worked out, right? How cool what you do now. Like, so, I've had a session with Colleen, and she is an incredible, intuitive healer, shaman, energy worker. I mean, thank goodness that happened because your gifts are so amazing, and
Ah,
it's
thank you.
awesome that you can share them with us.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I also appreciate it now. I did not appreciate it then. I was like cursing the universe lately.
No, of course. I mean, I think that's totally understandable.
It does though, like it feels like and maybe again, I'm referencing my own standpoint, but like a death or a dying when your Saturn return comes for you.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what mine felt like during my sudden return. I lost my little sister, which was like felt like a death for me. I mean, obviously I'm not the one that died, but it felt like losing a part of myself and having to reckon with that. So yeah, sudden return. I mean, I want to scare people. Some people breeze through their sudden return. That does happen. But for a lot of people, it is a time where you are sort of forced to step up and, rise up into who you are meant to be, whatever needs to happen to instigate that.
Yeah, I think it's good to know though, like that just that just wasn't part of my life. And I think if somebody, like if I would have been forewarned that there's like this time in your life where XYZ could potentially happen, there's a lot of change, how about that? If I would have just known that, I'm like, oh, okay, I can get on board with this. But it was just like, I feel like, and when we don't honor these ancient wisdom traditions like astrology, someone's like, oh, she's just having a hard time because she's almost 30, she's leaving her 20s, and 30's coming, and she has to whatever she, you know what I mean? It's like
Hmm,
the
hmm.
decade markers when you're like, no, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
so true. And I think that's where astrology can be really helpful. It can kind of help us understand what is happening outside of us and inside of us. And it can give us, not that we want to like blame stuff on, but it can kind of give us a point of reference. Like, okay, I'm going through my Saturn return. Saturn is asking me to take responsibility. It's aligning me with on the path of my karmic destiny. How can I embrace that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna answer a few more questions here.
Hmm.
Tanaz is probably exhausted because we've been like rapid firing at her. Um, okay, let's see. What do we have here? Oh, here's one. What implications does a cardinal grand cross have?
Okay, so I'm assuming this would be, well, I guess it's sort of the same. So we can have grand crosses in a natal chart. You can be born with it, but you can also have them in the sky. And basically, all that is planets in a sort of cross configuration lined up perfectly in the chart. It can indicate points of tension, but also tension that leads to powerful action. It's a very sort of what's the word, sort of a sacred alignment that indicates this person is going to, or this situation that we're going through now, we're rising up through tension into a place of power and strength.
Okay, and let's see. Oh my God, more questions.
Mhm.
Let's see here. Da, da, da. Oh, let's end. Here's a great one. Okay.
Mhm.
This is kind of twofold. She's asking what retrogrades mean in her birth chart, but I think just talking about retrogrades like as one big animal.
Yeah, sure. So a retrograde is when a planet appears to be moving backwards. So obviously the planet is not moving backwards, but it's just from our vantage point here on Earth. And when this would happen, so the ancients could see, you know, Venus and Mercury. So when this would happen, they would say the planet has entered the underworld, because it would dip below the horizon, it would disappear, and then all of a sudden it would reappear again. So they, you know, likened retrogrades to this planet going into the shadows, going into the underworld, and then being reborn. So that's the energy behind a retrograde. If you were born with a retrograde, it depends which planet, but let me say Mercury, because that's probably the most popular one. If you were born with a Mercury retrograde, it can indicate that your intuition is very high, because Mercury retrograde, even though we like to complain about it, is a time of heightened intuition. Mercury is not necessarily, Mercury rules the mind. And when it goes into the underworld, we become more sensitive. We become more in touch, not with our mental state of mind and our thoughts. We become more in touch with our feelings and other senses and, you know, maybe the hidden, unseen world. And so if you're born with that in your chart, it indicates that's part of your energy, and it's something, a gift to work with.
Okay. I'm going to ask you one last question here. What are your thoughts on the nodes of the moon? Because I think that's a north-south node. Would be great to talk about.
The nodes are awesome. I definitely recommend looking. And actually, I should say, I am working on an astrology book right now. It'll be out next year, so early next year. So,
Yay!
you know, stay tuned. I'm putting this all on paper for you guys. But so the lunar nodes, they're not actually a planet. They're a mathematical point. And yes, we have a north node and a south node, and they indicate they're a little bit more esoteric. So they indicate what we've mastered in a past life or in previous incarnations, and what we need to focus on in this life. So by tuning in and connecting with our south node, which is what we've mastered in our previous lifetimes, we can then connect with our north node, which is what we've come to sort of master and work towards in this life.
Amazing. So we only have a few minutes left. But I want to talk about you. And I know one of my favorite parts of the week is on Sundays, Tanaaz releases an astrology report, and you can watch it on YouTube, and it's like 5-ish minutes long. And, you know, it's like, that's like my church day. Like I watch your astrology. I watch Bobby Klein's I Ching report. I, you know, gem roll my face. I go out and ground and walk in the woods. You know, it's like part of my holy day for the week. And I think it's amazing that you do that, because it's so insightful to kind of start the week off with that information. But what else do you do, lady? You've got books, like.
Yes, I have books. I have, obviously, Forever Conscious is like my main baby. So like, you know, and you know, that's where I post a couple of articles a week. And then, so I do the weekly forecasts. I have a couple of books. You can find them on Amazon, on my website. And then I also release a monthly meditation, guided meditation, which is based on the cosmic energies for the month. So the meditation is designed to kind of help you harmonize and work with those cosmic energies. And then I also have a little full moon reading that I release on the full moon, which you can use as part of the ritual. So I post a ritual for the full moon and the new moon, and I do a little reading for the full moon as well that you can download and use as part of your ritual.
Yeah, I so appreciate everything that you offer, because you make this super understandable, when I think sometimes like you can get very lost when you hear astrologers talk, and you just like, again, you're a Capricorn. It's very grounded. You're like, here's the information. Here's what you do. This is what's happening. And like, let me make this easy for you. And I really appreciate your style of how you pass your wisdom to other people. Truly.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Do you have your mantra book close? Like, could you pull a mantra for us?
I do. Let me grab it. I'm sitting here by my bookshelf. Okay, hang on a second. Okay. Should I just pick a random one? for
I don't know
everybody.
what is calling you, lady.
Yeah, let me pick a random one for
Okay.
everybody. Okay. I open my heart to love. There you go.
Oh, that is a good one considering all the stressors that are going on in the world right now.
Totally, totally. And
Yeah.
also too with we're in Leo season. Leo rules over the heart. So I think that's kind of a perfect time for that too. So I open my heart to love. I think with the any kind of mantra or affirmation, it's good to sit with it, repeat it, feel it, use it in your meditations, tune into the vibration. So I open my heart to love and see how that resonates and where it needs to move in your body.
This is the last question, but it's not a question. Can someone see the cover of your book? They want to see your
Oh,
book
yeah, I should have
that you're
done that.
reading from.
There you go.
There it is. My pocket mantras.
Hmm.
It's amazing.
And so it's like sort of set out like this, each, mantra, and then it's got like a little description of how you can use it and embody it. So yeah, you can check that out.
Again, it's a great tool, and in like introductory ways, someone's like, what do you mean a mantra? Like, what am I supposed
Yeah,
to do with that?
yes, exactly. So yeah, it's a good little handy guidebook. Yeah.
How about someone's asking? It's called My Pocket Mantras. For
Yes.
those of you that are asking, and you can find her
Yes.
on her website and Amazon.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I think it's
Okay.
also at Barnes and Noble, Target.
Okay.
Find it there
Okay.
too.
Yeah, it's a great book. Well, lady, thank you. Thank you for answering all these rapid fire questions. Thank you for your time. I miss you when I come back to LA. I hope to see you in person.
Yes.
And I hope you have a great week.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for organizing this. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
And it's good to
see you
hear
too.
from everybody as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tanaaz.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.